Hello. So a while back, I asked a few friends on Discord to send me any questions that they wished to ask to world leaders in a scenario that I was building. Now, they did not know which mod I was using, whether it was TNO or Red Flood, or maybe it was just normal World War II Hearts of Iron 4. But then, in the end, I ended up using the most zany and ridiculously crazy mod of them all, Red Flood. So now, without further ado, we shall go through their questions and we shall try to articulate what are the answers that the different world leaders would give to the questions that my friends have asked. Now, remember that the answers are not necessarily being given by the world leaders themselves. Rather, we will keep it generic. Let's see that we are basically giving you the answers that the regime as a whole would give to a reporter. Now, I'm not really going to be role playing as the leaders or the regimes here. And as I've already said in the disclaimer, none of this represents my real political or social thoughts. One last thing before I begin. If you want to have your questions asked to world leaders from any modern Hearts of Iron 4, then just some time I'm going to make a community post where you can ask any question to any leader of any country. Now, of course, you will not know which mod or which countries might eventually end up winning. So that is the surprise in this entire operation. Now, without further ado, let's start with the biggest of them all, Russia, or rather the island of Assu, island of the Asian Soviet Socialist Union. Back in the 19th century, Sir Harold Mackinder's world island theory was made. He said that the world island encompasses around 57 million square kilometers of Eurasia, and he saw Russia as the major power trying to dominate the heartland, which would give them a strategic advantage over Western Europe. Klebnikov's bizarre, confusing ideology mixes Western futurism, Slavophilia, Pan-Asianism, Bolshevism, and esoteric divagations about the nature of numbers and time. He is genuinely schizophrenic. Russian futurism is the broad term for a movement of Russian poets and artists who have adopted the principles of Filippo Marinetti's Manifesto of Futurism. In his works, Klebnikov experimented with the Russian language, drawing upon its roots to invent huge numbers of neologisms and finding significance in the shapes and sounds of individual letters of Cyrillic. He has originated a new language for his pan-Asian state, and that is Zaum, a language which defines translation, and he writes futurological essays in it. Basically, the island of Assu is an extremely accelerationist state with large numbers of highly risky experimental mega projects starting everywhere from Moscow to Astrakhan, which is, by the way, the capital of Assu, all the way to Vladivostok. Ridiculously huge buildings are being constructed everywhere. But now let's get to the actual questions. So the only two questions that I got from my friends was the first, how are minorities treated in the island of Assu? And the answer is pretty simple. Minorities are treated quite well, except for those who reject this ideology of accelerationism and those who want to keep clinging to the old decadent beliefs. These kinds of minorities are purged. The second thing is, what is the position of the church in Russia? My friends, I must tell you that the church is decried as a bastion of outdated Semitic beliefs, and thus it is severely oppressed. In fact, some people in the Klebnikov administration claim that Christianity is an extremely Middle Eastern and Western European concept. It is not really good for the inner Eurasian soul that constitutes the island of Assu, and thus from Moscow or Warsaw all the way to Vladivostok, Christianity today is in grave peril. And nowhere is this more evident than Poland, where Catholics are being severely oppressed by the regime of Klebnikov. Now, moving on to Deutschland. Germany is today led by the Alte Sozialdemokratische Party Deutschland. It is led by Karl Popper. Popper proposes a course of reform to transform the revolutionary socialism of the GSR into what his party sees as a more rational and humane system, going in the same direction but further than the reforms of Levi. The questions that got asked to the German Socialist Ratter Republic are these: what is the position of Jews in Germany? Jews are treated extremely well as long as they let go of their previous bourgeoisie cultural beliefs and recognize that not only the Jews, but the Germans, the French, the Americans, the Nigerians, the Chinese, and the Indians are all humans first, workers second, citizens third, and then come their old cultural beliefs, which are largely immaterial in the German Socialist Republic. The second thing is, what is the position of Norse paganism in German society? The answer is simple. Paganism or any other religion is not appreciated in the Republic because it is a sign of old decadent feudalist beliefs. However, at the same time, in line with the regime's liberal socialist views, religion is tolerated and is even flourished in some areas, particularly in the Polish areas where we see huge amounts of refugees fleeing from the island of Assu and arriving in in the Polish speaking areas of Germany, especially in cities like Königsberg and Danzig, which have extremely strong Polish communities of refugees. There are even many Polish mafia gangs which have formed in these border regions, formed by disparate refugees seeking to make a name for themselves by the barrel of the gun. Then we come to France. So the question that I got asked was, what is the opinion about accelerationism for the French government? After Antoine Artaud's defeat by the soldiers of the German Red Army, accelerationism has been entirely purged thoroughly from French societies, and all of its leaders are now buried 6 feet under. Dig their graves, and you might get to see some accelerationists. Now, one question that has been asked for every single nation in basically the parts of the Roman Empire was that what is your opinion on the Roman Empire? And I will tell you the answer to this one by one. But wait, did you think France was done? No, sir. Although the Germans have managed to defeat the accelerationists in France, the accelerationists have formed a new government in exile in the desert city of Tindorf, where Antoine Artaud has locked himself up in a sand castle with a few thousand of his most radical supporters. Here in the desert, they wish to rebuild their vision of a France unbound by the rules of civilization and morality. His prolonged exile has only made Artaud even more radical, and one day he pledges to take back Paris and burn it as revenge for what they did to him. But for now, he is powerless to stop the revolution under Marcel Diet. Now, in Italy and in the French People's Republic, the Roman Empire is decried as a slave-owning imperialist state of oppressors. Thus, Roman history is taught only from an objective lens, and their slavery is heavily condemned. Although, of course, there is some level of Roman pride in the hearts of Frenchmen and Italians, but they dare not show it in public. After that, we go on to the next nation, which is Spain. Now, before I get on to the questions, let me explain Spain, which now stands under the Falange Española, led by Jose Antonio Primo de Rivera, who is now retired and running the country from behind the scenes. Primo de Rivera's group has the knightly enchantment of a spiritual romantic nationalism that marries revolutionary syndicalism in order to violently break the ossified fossil of the old order. Julio Ruiz de Alda has won the power struggle and become the face of Rivera's regime. A pilot by profession and the true bureaucratic mastermind behind the ruthless efficiency of the Falange, his mission and passion is to vertebrate Spain using practical and tangible organizational and infrastructural projects throughout the nation, with a particular corporativist and militarist streak. Basically, the all Spanish Union Empire is an extremely ultra-nationalist empire with a national syndicalist economy, where entire Spain is divided up between workers' syndicates centrally managed from the city of Madrid. The Roman Empire and the Spanish Empire are both respected as heroic forms of masculine dominance of Latin Spanish Crusader cultures, although, of course, the late Roman Christian Empire is respected more than the old pagan Roman Empire. At the same time, due to their national syndicalist beliefs, Roman slavery is condemned, but not as much as in France or in Italy. The second question is, what is your opinion of Portugal? Should Portugal be conquered by Spain? The answer is no. Portugal is seen as an allied state with similar ethos. However, their reactionary feudalist kingdom does not fit with the economic national syndicalist ideas of the Falange. However, there are no plans to conquer Portugal because the regime knows that Spain and Portugal are not the same. Next, we come to the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom is just a normal monarchy led by Christopher Addison and King George. Now, the United Kingdom has watched in horror as Europe has went through multiple cycles of revolutionary insanity. However, for the moment, it is safe and allied with the Americans across the oceans along with their nuclear bombs. What are the questions? The questions are, what is your opinion of Ireland? Well, the answer is simple. Ireland is a staunch enemy of the United Kingdom and the fortress of German socialist dominance over Europe on the islands. Ireland is today led by Paddy O'Dare and the Parti an Luch Oibre, which is Spartacist. They have nationalized all land and collectivized all agriculture. The United Kingdom officially supports the Ireland under James Craig and his Protestant Irish Unionist alliance. The second question that got asked for the United Kingdom is, what is your opinion of Germany? The answer is simple. Germany is a hated socialist enemy of the United Kingdom, and the only ally is the United States of America. Now we are moving on to Norway. Before I get to the questions, let me explain. Rolf Jacobson believes that the end of the world and at the same time the apocalypse and the Ragnarok is quickly approaching. Jacobson's theology mixes Christianity and Nordic paganism with the apocalypse and the Ragnarok as the same central event. Thus, they are basically apocalyptic religious socialists who are allied with Germany. Now, for those of you who don't know, Ragnarok is a foretold series of impending events, including a great battle in which numerous great Norse mythological figures will perish. The question asked here is, what is your opinion of Thor? I guess my friends wanted to allude to the many Avengers films that they have seen recently. So, Thor is respected, and there are many books, movies, and tales told of his greatness in the Norwegian Social Republic. In fact, Christianity is repressed as an old bourgeoisie feudalist ideology. Rolf Jacobson's regime says that Norway was free when it was pagan, and it was enslaved, and serfdom was born in Norway when the Vikings died out and Christianity took over. There are regular prayers held at new Norse pagan churches all over Norway for Thor's survival in the incoming Ragnarok. Now, the Germans are allied with the Norwegians, but Karl Popper knows that Jacobson and his regime are insane. They are trying hard for a regime change in Norway via a coup, and only time will tell if this internal power struggle will succeed or not. Sweden, meanwhile, is a puppet state of Germany. Now we move on to Hungary, which is led by Matthias Rakosi. For Hungary, there was only one question. What is your opinion on the Romanians? And the answer is simple. The Romanians are not only our staunch national enemies but also our class enemies. The Romanians have defeated the Hungarians and their socialist Transylvanian allies in the War of Romanian reunification. Thus, today, Romania is finally unified into Greater Romania, It has achieved its maximum possible borders. But the Hungarians are not happy about this, and one of these days they may ask Berlin to approve a grand invasion of the Romanian peasant state. Now, moving on to Romania. Romania is led by Ion Mihalakce and the Partidul Taranist. Let me explain you the ideology of Mihalakce's views. In his view, the country's progress did not consist in industrialization but in agriculture. He campaigned for cooperatives, voluntarily formed by peasants who had acquired property upon their return from the front. The entire ideology of the PT is based on Poporanism, which is a traditional Romanian ideology founded in 1890 by the lawyer and journalist Constantin Stere, in the spirit of the traditionalist currents that debuted with the Junimism of the 1860s. Stere built his ideology around the concept of the uniqueness of Romanian rural civilization, which he exalted as authentic, organic, in opposition to urban civilization and considered to be foreign to Roman reality. Stere argues that the only viable social and political form in Romania at the end of the 19th century could be rural life, in which the peasant and the traditional village had to be the main actors of development. Basically, Romania today is a state of the peasants and a nationalist state at that. The two questions asked to me is 1. Do car thefts happen in Romania? Now, the official answer is that car thefts seldom happen because the regime opposes urbanization. Thousands of people have been moved from the cities to rural communes, and they are encouraged to leave the cities and become farmers. So there is little incentive to buy cars. Thus, car thefts have decreased. The second thing is, what is your opinion on the Jews? The Jews are theoretically treated good in Romania, but practically speaking, they are treated as landlords. Pogroms and state sanctioned murders of these people are common, and that is heavily condemned by the Germans and the British and the Americans. Next, we move on to Barbarogenija. So, the ideology of Dimitrije Mitrinovic, leader of the artistic group known as Zenit. This group praises Balkan barbarity and spiritualism at the same time. It is inspired by both the Italian futurists and the Russian Bolsheviks. Zenit and Mitrinovic aim at kick-starting a pan-European revolution starting with the creation of a Balkan Union. The questions asked are: how do you deal with the fact that South Slavs are not united and constantly fight amongst themselves? Mitrinovic cultivates a barbarian mythos, according to which the people of Yugoslavia are barbarians of the 20th century, wild and untamed, above animal existence but not corrupted and softened by the luxuries of civilization. Mitrinovic aims to unite all Slavic peoples, or at least the South Slavic peoples, all the way from Udine in the north to Athenia in the south and Ruse to Corfu in the west, under one common national myth, and he hopes that this national myth will lead to the South Slavs letting go of their internal differences and unifying together. The second question is, who is your ally currently? The Barbarogenisian state has bad relations with the German socialist scum. They have okayish relations with the island of Assu. What is your opinion on Rome? The official answer is that their opinion of Rome is extremely bad because they believe that the Roman Empire were the spiritual, civilized enemies of the untamed Slavic soul, and thus the victory of Barbarogenija also marks the final victory of South Slavs against the imperialist Romans. Next, we move on to the Republic of Turkey. Halide Edip Erdoğan rules Turkey. She is a well-known feminist writer, and her role in the forced assimilation of Armenian children orphaned by the genocide into the Turkish culture has been severely condemned ever since she defeated the caliphate and took power in Turkey. The first question that has been asked is, who invented yogurt? The regime shall say that of course the Turks invented yogurt. Greece doesn't even exist on the map now. It is a part of Barbarogenija. The second is, what is your opinion on the Ottoman Caliphate? The answer is that the Ottoman Caliphate are reactionary scum who got defeated in the Great Civil War. The third is, what is your opinion on the reconquest of the Ottoman Empire, all the way to Sudan, Morocco, Somalia, Iraq, Kurdistan, Georgia, and Armenia? The answer is no reconquest will be pursued. Instead, Turkey will be for the Turks, and the regime shall focus on improving the lives of every single Turks. The next question for the Middle East was asked for the International Jewish Body, not for any state, but for a common international Jewish body. What are you doing currently? And the answer to that is our only remaining homes depend on who we are. The socialist Jews prefer to live in the socialist German fatherland, where they are relatively safe, while the ones who have traditionally lived in the Pale of Settlement prefer to live in the island of Assu, although they do face a lot of repression in it. Others, who are more into capitalism, prefer to live in the safest country of them all, the United States of America, while some others continue to live in the Kingdom of Syria. Although there were many pogroms against the Jews after the defeat of the Likud in the war against the Kingdom of Syria, King Ghazi has declared a blanket amnesty for the soldiers, although not the commanders, but the soldiers who took part in the Jewish rebellions. However, the Republic of Syria or Lebanon are not really safe for Jewish settlement, and neither is Egypt or the Kingdom of Najd, although the Republic of Assyria is kind of safe for the Jews to live in. The next question was for the Kingdom of Egypt. Where is Gamal Abdel Nasser? He is a minor soldier in the army who has been inspired a lot by the German Revolution. Now we move on to the Congo. What are your national goals? Louis Brudi is the first black leader of Congo, with the head of the Prussian armies in the Congo. The Prussians prefer to have a native leader at the helm of their army, lest they risk a rebellion inside their domains. The national goals of the Congo are quite clear. Louis Brody wants to have an Africanist anti-imperialist struggle, but without collaboration with the evils of socialism. Now we move on to the Union of South Africa. What are your opinions on black people? The opinions are extremely paternalistic. Black people shall be granted their rights very soon in South Africa, unless, of course, the United Labour Coalition loses their majority in the next election. They are on the cusp of granting civil rights to every single group, and South Africa shall never be the same again. The next is Iran. The questions asked to Iran are: what's your favorite regime espoused food? The main food that the regime in Iran propagates is the khoresht-i-mardom, the people's stew, a hearty protein-rich stew made with lentils, eggplant, potatoes, and a small portion of lamb or beef, served over state-subsidized whole wheat flatbread instead of expensive rice. It's designed to be easily mass-produced in communal kitchens while maintaining traditional Persian flavors. The second question is Shia Islam the bedrock of Iranian civilization? No, Marx is the bedrock of the world revolution. Next, we move on to China, which has a very exhaustive list of questions. China today is an accelerationist puppet state of the Japanese. Although the Japanese do not believe in accelerationism, they found Zheng Qi and his Young China Party to be the best candidates for collaboration. The name of the Young China Party is inspired from Enver Pasha's Turkish Young Turks. Given China's weakened condition in the early 1920s, the YCP's primary platform was to advocate for the elimination of China's warlords and the establishment of a strong central government. It also promotes a nationalist agenda which focused on the abolition of the special privileges and extraterritoriality which foreign powers had obtained in China during the final years of the Qing dynasty. It was also strongly anti-communist initially. The party is made up of largely landlords, school teachers, and businessmen, very similar to the Kuomintang, but recently it has also included all sorts of weird poets, futurists, and accelerationists. The questions asked are: what distinguishes your brand of accelerationism from European models like the one in Antoine Artaud's French state? The answer is that China is not Europe. Our accelerationism is rooted in the Chinese spirit, centralized authority, national unity, and the revival of our great civilization. Unlike the racial obsessions of certain European nations, our focus is on cultural strength and national rebirth. We do not seek European imperialism, but rather the restoration of China's rightful place as the center of the world. The second question is, how does your government reconcile traditional Confucian values with accelerationist authoritarianism? First of all, accelerationism is not authoritarianism. Second, Confucianism teaches respect for hierarchy, duty, and national harmony, all essential elements of a strong accelerationist state. The emperor was once the son of heaven and the unifying force of China. He had the mandate of heaven. Today, the state has assumed that mandate. Our people must obey, work, and sacrifice for the collective good, just as Confucianism demands loyalty to the family and ruler. The third question is, does your regime see Japan as an enemy to be permanently resisted or as a potential future ally against socialism and Western imperialism? The answer is Japan will pay for its crimes. However, at the movement, we must collaborate with the Japanese, as our true enemies are the socialists in the West. The next is, how does your government plan to industrialize China while maintaining the agrarian population's support? The peasantry is the backbone of China, but they cannot remain backwards forever. We will establish state run agricultural cooperatives, mechanize farming, and redirect surplus labor into factories. Rural villages will serve the needs of industry, producing food and raw materials while learning discipline and national service. But most importantly, we shall leap ahead into the future. The last question is, what role do large Chinese businesses and foreign capital play in your economic model? Private business is useful, but must serve national goals first. We will tolerate entrepreneurs so long as they contribute to the state. Foreign capital is a disease. We have suffered under its iron grip for too long. No foreigner will dictate China's economy. The next question is for Japan, which is under Kumazawa Hiromichi. What are your next plans? Expansionism, but only to a degree. We cannot let the corrupt zaibatsu or the creeping hand of modernity to tarnish the divine ancient soul of Japan. The second question, what are your opinions on big business like the zaibatsus? Bad. We need to restore the era of the shogunate and replace the destroyed Meiji order with a new hierarchical system where everyone knows their place. The last question is, what is your opinion on the United States of America? Simple. They are our final enemy, the only domino that must fall before Japan dominates Asia. Next, we move on to India. Now, since India doesn't really exist, we shall ask the masters of India, the United Kingdom, Jinnah or Nehru. The answer is just neither. They are both irrelevant now. The second is, what about Kali? Kali is a respected goddess in the interior, but the British heavily oppose her worship in favor of more palatable gods like Vishnu or Indra. Now we move on to Vietnam. Now, before we move on to Vietnam, take a look at all of these minor nations. There are no questions asked for them, like Insulindia, Malaya, or the Philippines. But now we move on to Vietnam. So, Vietnam is currently ruled by the VNQDD, the Vietnam Quoc Tan Dang. It is inspired from the KMT. It has nationalism and people's reforms, but with conservative characteristics. The first question is, what is your opinion on America? America is one of our staunchest enemies. Only the Japanese armies in Saigon are our true friends and allies. The second is, what is your opinion on land reform? We shall have slow land reform directed from above. We want to have a people state, but without disturbing the old heart of Vietnam and Indochina too much. Now we will move on to the other minor African nations. There was only one question asked for it: European modernization or nativism? And the answer to that depends on whom you ask. Some countries like Mauritania or the Algerian People's Republic or the Libyan Social Republic will say European industrialization, while the Republic of Niger or the West African Socialist Republic shall say that Africanism is the future. At the same time, modest Chad shall say that Islam is the future. Now we move on to Canada, which had only one question: what are your opinions on America? And the answer is simple: America is our friend. Next, we have America. It has three questions. The first is: what is your opinion on the various superpowers of the world? The opinion on Germany is very bad. Although we respect their liberal version of socialism, they are still socialists after all, and our main enemies. The same goes for Russia, which we consider to be nothing better than the Germans. The second is: what is the position of civil rights in America? The American president shall say that he has no comment on civil rights for now. Next question: who drives the country, the rich or the working man? Bronson Murray Cutting shall say that the working man leads the country while the rich direct it with their superior capital. America is, after all, the land of capitalism. The fourth is: do you have any mafia connections? Bronson Murray Cutting says he has no comments on it. Next, we move on to Mexico, which has finally been unified by Pancho Villa. The first question is: what are your opinions on the Catholic Church? It is respected and encouraged by Pancho Villa. He has no enmity against the Church. The second is: what is your opinion on Emiliano Zapata? Emiliano Zapata is a hero of the Mexican Revolution, with his statues put up everywhere. Indeed, Villa recognizes that had Zapata been alive, he might have potentially been the leader of the Mexican Revolution. The third is asked not to the Mexican leadership, but a more generic question: how much corruption is in Mexico? And I would say that there is a high amount of corruption in Mexico today. Pancho Villa, after winning against the southern warlord states, has set up his own men in every single state, and he runs Mexico more or less like a mafia state. So the only God knows what shall happen after this. Next, we move on to South America, which has a very colorful list of weird ideologies and ideologues. And the questions are for Brazil. You see João Amazonas and the Partido Comunista Brasileiro. Amazonas is a hardline totalitarian communist who ruthlessly executes his political opponents, engages in violent industrialization, instates terror among his own citizens, and tries to take over South America to eliminate the Spanish language within his state and replacing it with a new people's dialect. After taking power, Amazonas has instituted a reign of terror, targeting anyone opposing his regime. He has also attempted to unify South America by violently conquering all of the other countries on the continent. Until now, he has succeeded in conquering Uruguay, Paraguay, and Argentina. But his efforts to conquer the rest of the continent are staunchly opposed by the United States, who has armed the other countries on the periphery of the South American Maximalitat. Amazonas fully believes that the totalitarian path he follows is the only way to liberate Brazil from oligarchs and transform the country into a modern one. The questions are: does your government promote Catholicism as part of its ideology, or do you advocate for a secular state? The answer is simple: strict state mandated secularism. The second question is regarding the races. But even before I ask this question, Amazonas violently retorts that all races are equal in the South American Maximalitat. The third question is: do you aim for rapid industrialization or do you prioritize a more balanced agrarian economic approach? The answer is simple: a fast and hard heavy industrialization, inspired by German economists and guided by German industrialists who have been called en masse to the Maximalitat for increasing industrialization. The third question is related to your name, Chairman. Shall the Amazon rainforest be protected or do you prioritize industry? The answer is simple: The people's well being comes first, nature second. The fourth question is, what is your opinion on the world? And again, this is very simple. As you can see, Brazil is slowly in the process of joining the Rot Front. So all countries in the Rot Front are its allies. At the same time, it hates the Entente, it hates the Japanese, and it also hates the island of Assu for destroying the revolutionary movement by having some revisionist thoughts. They also respect the Damavan Pact, and relations between Iran and Brazil are at an all-time high. The last question is, what is your opinion on culture, like arts or anything, painting, arts? The answer is simple. Socialist realism is the only type of art allowed in the South American Maximalitat. This has given birth to a new cultural movement called Latino Socialist Realism, which depicts Latin American workers and peasants in a new kind of utopian socialist state. The last questions are for Mongolia, which is ruled by Mahakala, which is actually Roman von Ungern Sternberg wearing a funny mask. He believes himself to be the second avatar of Mahakala. The only question asked to Mongolia was, how is Chinggis Khan seen in Mongolian history books? Very, very good. Chinggis Khan is seen as a god, the first avatar of Mahakala, the Buddhist god of war, and the second avatar is Baron Roman von Ungern Sternberg. And with this, my friends, we end today's stream. These were the questions that people wanted to ask to the different leaders of the world in Red Flood. As I have said before, you will be able to ask your own questions very soon, as I will be putting up a community post for it. So be in good health and goodbye. Thank you.